Welcome to the carnage.
And welcome back to the Carnage. I am Mr. Carnage, and today we are going to talk about something that I feel hasn't had a lot of publicity even over the 8 or 9 years that it's been out. And I find it an interesting topic just simply because there's not a lot in the space, right? And what I'm going on about is a documentary filmmaker by the name of Cassie Jaye. So, about 9 years ago, she made a documentary called The Red Pill. And what The Red Pill was originally supposed to be about was the filmmaker was going to go and visit with, men's right advocates and, you know, uh, show the underbelly of the misogynistic and hateful nature that is men, right? So that was the point originally of the documentary, and it ended up not being that because she spent 3 years of her life learning during this time about actual men's rights, and still to this day, it is the only film that has ever been made about men's rights. So during that 3 years, she met with these people, she sat down, she talked to them, and she understood that um, her views and their views weren't so different, right? And so I know you can't hear the audio, and I'm going to explain why. The reason why is I did reach out. I wasn't responded to. I'm such a small YouTube creator that, obviously that doesn't hurt my feelings or anything. But there was another channel that did try to talk on this a while back. They did get copyright strike for it. I'm not going to take that chance. So there will not be any audio, but I will have the links to both this interview and the actual documentary in my description. And so you can check them both out. The documentary is currently free on YouTube Free TV. So you can watch it. You have to pay, extra or anything like that. It is free to watch. And so I will put those descriptions or the links in the descriptions for everybody if you're interested. So, kind of back on topic here. Uh, I don't want to give a bunch of spoilers if you haven't seen it, but to kind of give you just why I'm making this video is it's really sad that she went out and she made this film, and during the time of filming this and getting to meet all of these people, because she met with people on both sides. She met with men's right advocates, and she met with really really man hating feminists. And she realized during that time and saw through the looking glass of the difference between the two, that media still to this day paints any man advocacy at all, doesn't matter what it is, as hate group and hate speech, and automatically clump them in as white supremacists, even though there's a lot of minorities in the space, that talk on men's rights. Even though that's a thing, it's still white supremacy. It's the talking points of the far left feminists that consistently, instead of hearing each side out and coming to some type of middle ground, or listening to each other and being like, hey, you know what, you're right, that is an issue. They automatically just generalize anything that has to do with men as predatory and evil and hurtful and misogynistic and racist and bigoted. And it's just, it adds nothing to the value of gender politics. And that's one of the biggest reasons why I don't like the majority of feminists that I met, is because they don't listen. They don't want to listen. They don't care to listen. Their one goal is to just undermine anything that men does. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what it is. Yeah, I mean, you could be like, hey, I believe women should have the right to do this. And they're like, well, because a man said it, that's bad. You only want to do it because you're trying to oppress us, which makes no sense, right? If you're trying to give them something, you're trying to oppress them. Makes absolutely no fucking sense. But that is their view. And when you watch the documentary, you're going to really kind of see that. And I felt like she did an amazing job of trying to be very unbiased, even though at the beginning she did come into that, filmmaking as a feminist, and she said as much at the beginning. She said she was, you know, all about, women's rights, and she felt that everything she ever heard about men advocates was they were misogynistic and hateful people. And then she actually came to understand once she talked to them that that was very far from the truth, and that mainstream media paints it as such. And again, the difference between, and I want to make this like distinction so people are aware that that's even what my channel and my content is about is, there are the Andrew Tates of the world, right? There are those fucking alpha male, you know, subject type people, right? I'm not saying they don't exist. I'm just saying that they are part of it, but it's no different than feminism, right? You have good feminists that want equality for all, and that is their goal. But then you have the extremists, right? That are like, men should start life in jail and work their way out and all that kind of shit, right? So you got bad on both sides, and that's a lot of what the documentary was about. Was she? I don't know if she purposely, and I don't think she did. I don't think she purposely met with the feminists she did to paint a picture of how toxic feminism is, but it's the ones that she found that was willing to talk to her were very, you know, angry. How dare this woman make a documentary about men's rights, and why would men need rights? They're privileged, and, there are oppressors, and how dare you, make any kind of fucking, talking points with them. Why would you sit down with these people and try to get to know them? They were all pissed off about it. And you'll see that if you watch the documentary, which I found to be interesting, that all the men's advocates were like, oh no, we definitely need, places for women. We do need these organizations to help women and protect women. But we also need these things for men. And that best as I could tell, pissed most of them off. It really made a lot of the feminists angry, which makes no sense because I thought feminism was supposed to be about, gender equality. But that doesn't seem to be what it's about anymore. It seems to be what it's about is special rights and privileges for women and girls, right? That they should be treated on a higher, echelon and pedestal than men, regardless. Doesn't matter what it is. And when you try to give them the statistics of, hey, you're already there, so you're basically fighting a fight that's already been won in a lot of ways. There's nothing that a men, have rights to that women don't. And if we're being honest, I mean, men's side of things is a lot more skewed because you bring in things like family court, right? We all are aware that family court is very, um, heavy towards giving women what they want at a family court. Men typically do not win. Doesn't matter. I mean, you have to literally prove that the mother is, a hooker, drug addict, suicidal, homicidal, just piece of shit. And even then, it's a 50-50 whether the courts will give the father custody, right? So, I mean, there's plenty of stories out there. If you don't believe me, look it up. You'll find stories. It's very easy to find these stories. Um, they're all over Google. They're on TikTok. I mean, if you can't find one, you're not looking, basically. Um, and so there's also the man tax that's never talked about. And women say, well, there's a woman's tax because, women's underwear is more expensive than men's underwear. Women's clothing is more expensive than men's clothing, and et cetera, et cetera. But what they're not taking into consideration is they don't put in the variables, right? Men's clothes, for example, t-shirts and jeans, right? Women have t-shirts and jeans, and they're not more expensive than men's t-shirts and jeans. But women's clothes typically are more expensive because they're made with a lot more to them, right? They got different materials, and they got these buttons, and they got the shiny things, and, they're cut a certain way and they're sewed a certain way. And so it takes them longer to make these blouses and these dresses and all that than it does men's clothes. They don't take that into consideration. It's just, well, why are women's clothes more expensive than men's clothes, right? Or why do men get paid more than women do? And we've, I don't know how many times disproved the pay gap. It's like, well, why do men have more rights than women when it comes to education? We've disproven that. There's more women in college and university than there are men. And some of these women did get in solely based on the fact that they are female and that these universities needed to meet a quota. Hence, you bring in DEI, for example, and DEI is something that does, in a lot of ways, support women getting jobs and careers and things like that over men, regardless of the standard. So I would argue and say that women technically do have more rights when it comes to those things than men. Now, I feel when you talk about opportunity that that's different when you're talking about specific job roles, right? So let's say construction. Obviously, there's more opportunity for men in construction than there is women. And most women don't want to do construction anyway. So I don't know why that's even brought up as a point when talking about page or wage pay. Um, Most women don't want to go lay bricks. Most women don't want to go pick up trash. Most women don't want to build houses. Most women don't want to clean sewers. Most women don't want to go into mines and mine coal, right? So when you look at that, those opportunities for men are there because mostly men work at those types of jobs. Women don't. But when you take that away, right? Throw out like manual labor, hard labor jobs, engineering, construction, all that. Throw all that out, and then just focus on cushiony jobs. So secretaries, accountants, those type of jobs are mostly women nowadays, and women in those roles typically do not only make more money than men, but they're given more opportunity because they're so much more ingrained in those companies than men are, right? And then they always bring up CEOs. Well, again, a lot of women do not pursue being a CEO because being one is a 24-hour, 7-day a week, call anytime type job. They give up their families, they give up time, they have nothing going on in life but work. And most women don't want to give up their personal lives to pursue a career like that. I'm not saying not all of them do, because what? I think it's like out of the 1,000 top CEOs, I think it's somewhere in the vicinity of 14% are now women in those positions. So again, not every woman is like that, but when they do surveys and they ask women about these things, yeah, majority of them are like, no, I don't want to give up my personal life. I don't want to give up what I'm doing. So that is just what it is. But they take that data, and what they do is they take this statistic out of it and they leave out the context, and they use that as their talking point for why they hate men. And so that's what this documentary was kind of trying to show, is here's the truth. And she started out on one side of the aisle, and by the end she saw the error of what was going on. And so again, not going to give away any um you know give anything away about the documentary. I would suggest everybody go watch it if you're interested in seeing a woman's journey to enlightenment and understanding when she was brainwashed and force fed one ideology, and then she took it upon herself to go behind enemy lines, so to speak, and humanize her enemy. And that's what she did. She wanted to humanize her enemy and see if they were actually what the world made them out to be, or if they were deep down just humans. And she found out that that's exactly what they are, humans. And I like the documentary for the fact that it does paint the picture that, hey, feminism paints men as subhuman. They paint men as these predator oppressors that, we wake up and think about grape. We eat our cereal thinking about grape. We That's all men do from the time they wake up to the time they go to bed. And it's just such a hurtful and untrue, talking point for feminism that I feel pisses most men off because they're like, I don't want to sit here on the back burner and try to every single day of my life prove that I'm a good guy. And I think that most men today at this point, they just gave up. They don't care anymore. They're like, I'm not going to prove I'm a good guy because I don't need to prove it. I don't care anymore. I'm tired of this fucking bullshit. I'm tired of the gender war. I'm tired of all of it. I'm opting out, right? And that's kind of what my, you know, more or less my channel's about, is to try to bring up these type of issues where it isn't anti-woman. It's, not pro-man necessarily. It's, hey, these things are going on in men's spaces and people should be aware of it. And here's what we're up against. And that's why I show a lot of the TikTok videos that I do. And yes, I do comment harshly on stupid behavior. Um, and I feel like that is the biggest difference between, men advocacy and feminism, is that we're willing to say, yes, there's bad men in the world. Absolutely. We are, I don't know a single man that doesn't agree with that there are evil men in the world. But women, on the other hand, especially feminist women, don't believe that there are any bad women in the world. That women aren't capable of being evil. They're not capable of being violent. They're not capable of, SA or any of those things. And that's the biggest problem, is if men are willing and do say, yes, there are bad men, but feminists can't admit or take accountability that, yes, there's bad women, that's the disconnect. And that's really, at the end of the day, what it's about. That's the biggest disconnect between the two. And I feel that the good feminists that do admit and can bring themselves to say, hey, you're right. There are, bad women in the world that baby trap guys, that, perform parental fraud, that, do all of these horrible things to men specifically and get away with it. And that's wrong. But that agenda for feminism is so few and far between. I don't know a lot of women on that side of the aisle that would talk on that without bringing it up as, well, that might happen, but it's because we're victims. It doesn't matter what it is, right? They just are like, well, we're the victim. It's like, why would you want to be a victim and looked at as weak and helpless in society, that you don't have any worth and that you need society to more or less give you a safe space and pat you on the back and give you a participation trophy and be like, yeah, you're doing it, girl. Why would you need that versus pulling up your own pants, and taking a step forward and not being a victim? I'll never understand that mentality personally, but hey, that's just me. So, kind of to wrap this up, I would suggest everybody go watch this interview. Is a great interview that's playing in the background. She has a lot of good talking points. There is a lot of good back and forth between her and the interviewer, and then definitely watch the documentary if you haven't seen it. Again, it's the only film, the only, documentary, the only thing about men's rights advocacy out there. And if you bring up the millions of documentaries about feminism, which there are, you would see the discrepancy there. So definitely go check it out. It's worth a watch. It's about an hour and a half long. You'll learn some cool stuff. You'll see a journey and an adventure that started out one way and ended another, which I found to be interesting, that, somebody could go in with one mindset and come out at the end of that tunnel with a different one. It was nice to see. So highly recommend it. Outside of that, you guys are awesome, and you all have a great night, and I'll catch you all in the next video.